So we'll go ahead and get started. If you didn't hear me earlier, we will be using some props today as the last 15 minutes of this class are restorative. So blankets, blocks, pillows, whatever you have available to you will be fine. If you have anything that's, I'm sorry, I forgot to say this. If you have a strap or a belt or anything similar to a strap or belt, you might grab that. And if you don't, we'll make do without. I'll give you just one more minute. Okay. And we will begin lying down on our backs today. So if you'd like to go ahead and make your way there, feel free. I have some dogs, sleeping dogs near me, so hopefully they stay sleeping. All right. If you haven't done so already, make your way onto your back. And I try not to do this. I wore all black and my yoga mat's all black. So I apologize in advance if you can't fully see me. I try to remember to not dress like my yoga mat so you can see my body. Okay, so beginning lying down on our backs, your knees might be bent like mine are with the feet on the mat. This is a great option to take if there's any sensitivity in the lower back. If you'd like, you can also straighten your legs out long if that feels supportive for you. And you might even close your eyes. Let's take a moment to just feel our bodies on the ground, noticing all the places where your body makes contact with your yoga mat and the floor beneath you. And really allowing the body to be heavy on your mat and heavy on the floor beneath you. And then see if you can start to notice your breath. And without changing your breath or altering it, can you merely notice it? And as you continue to keep your awareness on your breath, you might also notice your mind getting distracted or distracting thoughts come pouring in. I would invite you to acknowledge all of those thoughts and distractions and see if you can just notice them and then release them, kindly guiding your focus back to your breath. Focusing on your inhale and your exhale. And if it's helpful for you, you might even recite this in your mind. Now I'm breathing in as you breathe in. Now I'm breathing out as you breathe out. Now I'm breathing in. Now I'm breathing out. And we'll continue to be here for about 5 more rounds of breath. And then when you're ready, we'll just draw both knees in towards the chest. You might hold on to the backs of your thighs like I am, or you can even reach for your shin bones if that's accessible. And we'll just start to rock from side to side. Then let's place both feet on our mat and grab the strap. If you don't have the strap, just hang tight. I'll give an option that works without it. So I'm taking the strap along the ball of my right foot and then holding on to the ends of my strap. If you don't have a strap, you can interlace your fingers behind your right thigh and just push your thigh into your hands. So for some of us, the leg may not straighten, that's okay. You might have a slight bend in your knee. I would invite you to think about lengthening your leg before you think about pulling your leg closer. So for anyone whose leg is bent a little, think about extending out through your heel and reaching it up towards the sky, and then taking the back of your right thigh and pressing it forward. You can even articulate by pressing the inner part of your right thigh forward so that your leg is fully square, your right femur bone is square in your hip socket. And then if your leg is all the way straight and your right foot is all the way flexed, then you might think about guiding your leg a little closer towards your body. And the idea here is that we're just inviting sensation into the back of the right leg to stretch back through the hamstrings, the calf muscle, the Achilles tendon. It doesn't have to be your most deepest stretch ever. And then breathe into whatever you might be feeling right now. And that left leg can be bent like mine is. It can also be straight, whatever feels better. From here, we're going to guide our leg across the midline and take it over to the left just slightly. So really only moving your leg like a couple of inches. If you could think like your right big toe is almost above your belly button. There's just that slight internal rotation here. Okay, now let's see if we can guide our leg over a little bit more. So taking the leg over to the left, across the midline, just a couple more inches. And then guiding the leg over to the left, just a couple more inches. So now it might even be like your right heel is past your left leg. And then carefully guide your leg back to the center. You can move the strap. My strap is looped, so let me just move it. If you're holding onto both ends of the strap, you can just move both ends into your right hand and take your left hand to your left hip bone and open your leg to the right. So we're letting that right leg open as much as it can without letting the left hip come off the ground. So we want to keep the pelvis neutral and level. And maintaining an external rotation in the right hip. So that's if you're outwardly rotating in your right hip, it's like you're taking your right kneecap and your toes and you're turning them to face the ground. For a lot of us, that may not actually happen. It's just the direction we're headed. A couple more breaths here. You can slowly guide your leg back to the center. We will lift the left leg up and place the left foot on the strap, and then bring the right foot down to the mat. The same thing on the other side, holding on to both ends of your strap here or whatever you have. If you don't have the strap, remember we're just interlacing our hands behind our thigh and pushing our thigh into our hands. And just like I directed on the other side, if your left leg is bent, first let's think about lengthening that leg by reaching the left heel up towards the sky. And if your leg is all the way straight and your left foot is all the way flexed, then you might think about guiding the leg a little closer towards your body. And a couple more breaths here will stay. You might even notice if your left leg is turning out a little or in a little. Think about pressing your left inner thigh forward so that your left femur bone is completely square in your hip socket. All right, now we're going to guide our leg over to the right. So first, just take your leg across your midline over to the right a couple of inches. So you might think about lining up your left big toe with your navel. And then guide the leg over to the right 2 more inches. And then guide it over to the right a couple more inches. And maybe at this point now, your left foot has completely surpassed your right leg. And then very slowly guide your leg back to the center. We'll move both ends of the strap over to the left hand and open the leg out to the left. The right hand will come onto your hip. And again, if you don't have a strap, this might be where you just kind of hold on to your leg with your left hand, wherever it falls. And just notice what's going on with your hips, with your pelvis. We want to feel the back side of our pelvis equally grounded on both sides. So the backs of your hip bones are both equally rooted into your mat. And then our left hip, our whole left leg is maintaining external rotation. So we find that rotation by starting in the hip socket. Think of outwardly rotating your hip as if you were spinning your kneecap and your toes to face the ground. And then breathe for a few more breaths here. And then slowly guide your leg back to the center. And you can lower your left leg down. Great. Go ahead and move your strap out of your way. And let's roll onto any side, coming into a fetal position. And then press ourselves all the way up. And we'll go ahead and make our way onto all fours on hands and knees. I like a little support under my knees. Feel free to set up a blanket or even double up the thickness of your mat if you need a little more support for your knees. And we'll come into a tabletop position. So your knees are under your hips, your wrists are under your shoulders. And then our fingers spread nice and wide, spreading the fingers as wide as you can and actively rooting down into all of your knuckles. And then actively root down into your shin bones, your ankles, and the tops of your feet. So we're in an active child's pose. Draw your belly up and in towards your spine. Press into your hands and feet so much like you're really trying to push the ground away from you. And the more you push the ground away from you, the more you draw the core in. And now fully let your abdominal muscles release. Tuck your toes under and reach your heart forward as we come into cow. And then untuck your toes, push into your feet, push into your hands, and pull your belly up and in as we come into cat, looking down at the belly. And then add the breath. Inhale, let's tuck the toes, release the belly, reach the heart forward. Even roll the shoulders back so your collarbones grow wider. And then exhale, push into hands, push into feet, pull the belly up and in, look down at the belly. And we'll just keep this going, inhaling to cow and exhaling to cat. And it's okay if your inhale and exhale aren't perfectly matched up with cat and cow. As long as you're breathing, you're doing it right. And after you come into cat pose, we'll keep our cat spine and draw the bum back towards the heels as we come into child's pose. So you can even draw your knees a little further apart and let your belly wiggle in between your thighs if that feels supportive. And let your forehead come all the way down to your mat. If the mat feels far away, you might get a block or a pillow and put something under your forehead to fill that gap. We'll stay in child's pose for about 5 breaths. In this moment, I would invite you to breathe a little more deeply. Let your lungs and belly expand as you inhale. See if you can even fill your lungs up so much with air that you're breathing into your back, that your back broadens and expands as you inhale. 3 more breaths like that. Breathing in fully. Breathing into the whole body. Know that you can come back here at any time to rest and take a break. We'll slowly start to come back up onto our hands and knees. And then let's draw the toes under and lift the hips up and back for downward dog. We'll stay in downward dog for a moment. So you might find a little movement here if that feels good, bending the knees or swaying the hips. Staying connected to your breath. And then if you're still moving in downward dog, let's find some stillness. Bend your knees if you haven't done so already. And then pull your navel up and in towards the spine. It's like you're trying to wedge like a bar or a rod in between your hip creases and your belly. Send your tailbone up towards the sky. And then bend your knees a little more and look forward and walk your feet towards your hands. Take your time. Come into a forward fold here. So for most of us, we might keep the knees a little bent. The floor may or may not reach your hands. That's okay. Let the head hang heavy for a moment. Feel free to sway side to side. And then keeping your knees bent, slowly start to roll up your spine, vertebra by vertebra, bringing your head up last. Coming to stand tall in your mountain pose, Tadasana. And when you stand in Tadasana, your feet can be together or apart, however it feels supported in your body. Let's roll the shoulders up into the ears and then bring them down onto the back so the palms face forward. And then as you inhale, reach your arms out and up, reaching for the sky. As you exhale, bend the knees, hinge from the hips and fold forward. As you inhale, lift up about halfway, bring your fingertips to your shin bones and try to flatten out your back. As you exhale, round your back, fold forward. Take your hands down to your mat or down to yoga blocks if you have them. We'll step the left foot back, coming into a lunge, and you can go ahead and drop the left knee down and untuck the toes. Okay. From here, walk your hands up to your right thigh so we find ourselves in a crescent lunge. And you'll either keep your hands on your thighs or you might reach your arms up to frame the face. So I'm sending my pelvis forward slightly and pressing down into my feet a lot. Breathe here. Let your shoulders soften away from your ears and even let the neck soften. And one more breath here. Take your hands down to your mat or down to blocks. We're going to straighten out the right leg any amount and draw the hips back. So we're in a half split here. So I'm flexing that right foot and pushing into the right heel. The hips are pulling back as the chest reaches forward. And the idea here is we're not actually sinking our bum to our heel. Our bum is lifted up and off of our heel, and our chest is reaching forward. You might even take a forward fold here by beginning to round your back and draw your nose towards your knee. Now if you chose to fold forward, lift up a little bit. You're going to take your right hand to your right foot and literally pick your foot up and move it to the left just a couple of inches. And then walk your left hand outside of your right leg. So I'm keeping my hands on blocks to keep the floor closer to me. So we're literally have both hands outside of our right leg and we're twisting our upper body over to the right. 3 more breaths here. Okay, walk your hands back to frame your front foot. And actually you can take your hands over to the outside of the inside of your right leg and swing your leg out to the side. Walk your hands up to your hips and ground into your right foot so that right leg is straight. And then reach the right hand to the outer part of your right leg as you lift the left arm up and over for a side stretch. Feel free to look up at the sky. And then come back to the center. Hands can come down to the mat. The right knee can come back in. We're back in tabletop. And tuck your toes under. Come into your cow spine. So the belly sways down as the heart reaches forward. Shift your weight forward so your shoulders are right over your wrist. And then keeping this cat spine. Lower just the chest and chin down in between your hands. So your elbows bend back, but they stay hugged in tight. Now push into your hands and glide your chest forward. Let's find a baby cobra. Breathe in. And as you exhale, lift yourself all the way back up. You can move through all fours and come into downward dog. Take a full breath in and a full breath out. Staying on the right side, we're going to lift our right leg up, keeping the hips level and square. And then step the right foot in between the hands. Take your hands up onto blocks or come up onto fingertips as we come into another low lunge. This time the back knee stays lifted. And again, blocks are really useful here, books, water bottle, whatever you have. We're going to keep our feet planted where they are and just lift the hips and extend the legs. So the legs may not straighten, that's okay. Reaching the left heel down towards the mat. We're in a really wide version of pyramid pose. Soften your front knee, come back to your lunge. Look forward, lengthen your spine and breathe in. And as you exhale, lift the hips up, lengthen out the legs any amount. We'll do this a few more times. Inhale to bend, look forward, lengthen your spine. Exhale, hips lift high, legs straighten any amount. Moving at your own pace. And then the next time your legs are straight, keep them straight. You can hop your back foot in a couple of inches or until that back heel is grounded. And then just look down at your feet for a moment. And we want our feet on railroad tracks rather than a tightrope. So that might mean you have to move your feet a little further apart. And then your left toes are facing the upper left corner of your yoga mat. So now we've come into our pyramid pose. Draw your right hip back as you reach the left hip forward, working to square off our hips. And you can remain here with a flat back. You might also enjoy folding forward. I would say if folding forward causes you to bend your knees, then sorry about that, everybody. Okay, we were in pyramid pose. And then I was apologizing for the butt shot. I don't know how much you all heard, but we're gonna walk our hands over to the left, turning the left toes out and the right toes in for a wide angle forward fold. So if you're using blocks, you can take your blocks with you. And if not, you can reach your hands for the ground. And once you come into this wide angle forward fold, just shift your weight into your toes and into your heels, back and forth. Rocking the weight forward, rocking the weight back. And eventually settling your weight right in the center of your feet. Root down into your feet a lot and come up halfway. Come up so that your hands are on your hips and your back is flat and you're having to use your abdominals to keep your upper body lifted. Hold here for 2 more breaths. And now push into the feet a little more and lift all the way up. Pick your right toes up and turn them out. And then bend into the right knee. Let's find warrior 2. Your front heel is in alignment with the arch of your back foot. And our arms come out to this T shape. Let's stay here in warrior 2 for 5 full breaths. Straightening through the left leg, bending through the right knee. You might feel your muscles a little trembly or shaky. That's normal. Couple more breaths. And let's cartwheel the hands down to the mat, spin the back heel up. You can step your right foot back to downward dog. And as you inhale, let's come forward into plank pose. As you exhale, soften the knees down, sit back to child's pose. Take a full breath in and a full breath out. Come back up to hands and knees, tuck your toes under. We're back in downward dog. Bend your knees, look forward, walk, or hop your feet to your hands. Inhale, lift up halfway, flattening out your back. Exhale, fold and round forward. Inhale the arms up, rolling up your spine. Exhale, mountain pose, Tadasana. Inhale your arms up. Exhale, fold forward. Inhale, lift up halfway, flattening your back. Exhale, round your back. Take your hands down to your mat or your yoga blocks. Step your right foot back and soften your right knee down to your mat. Untuck your right toes and walk your hands up to your left thigh, and then send your pelvis forward any amount. You can stay here with your hands resting on your thigh, or you might reach your arms up to frame your face. Wherever you are, root down into your feet and plug your left hip back. Then breathe. Breathing in, breathing out. One more breath in. As you exhale, take your hands down to your mat or your blocks. We'll take our half split. So you're going to straighten out the left leg any amount and flex through the left foot. You might have to kind of wiggle that heel forward. And the more you push into that left heel, the more you flex your left foot, the deeper this stretch can be for you. Keep your bum lifted up off your heels and start to reach your chest forward. If you'd like, you can even round the back and take a forward fold here. Just a couple breaths. If you folded forward, come all the way back up. We're going to pick our left heel up and move it over to the right, and then walk our hands outside of our left foot so that we're twisting our upper body over to the left. Try not to lose that flex in the left foot. I know this stretch is it's a little tender, right? It's really getting into the IT band, the sensitive area. Okay, now you can walk your hands over to the right. So they're on the inside of your right foot. Swing your left leg out to the left and walk your hands up to your hip. So that left leg is straight, the foot is grounded, and your left toes are facing forward. Left hand comes to the outer left leg as the right arm reaches up and over for a side bend. Breathe here. And come back to the center. You can bring your hands down to your mat and just hug your left knee in to meet your right knee. Tuck your toes under, find your cow spine. Yes, cow spine. Belly down, heart forward. And then shift your weight forward so shoulders are right over the wrist. Lower down, chest and chin. So my belly's actually off my mat here. The weight is so far forward. Now push into your hands, glide the chest forward. Find your baby cobra, maybe even a full cobra if that feels right. And then push yourself right back up through hands and knees. Let's come back to downward dog. Take a full breath in and a full breath out. Inhale your left leg up. Keep your hips level and square. Exhale, step the left foot in between the hands. Bring your hands up onto blocks if you have them, or come up high onto your fingertips. So we're in our lunge. The back knee stays lifted. And then keeping your feet where they are, lift your hips up and lengthen out your legs any amount here. Reaching your right heel into your mat. And then lift your gaze, rebend your left knee, come back to your lunge and really work to lengthen out your spine. Send the hips high, lengthen the legs. So we're just moving in and out of these two shapes. And if you have to adjust your feet a little, that's okay. I would invite you to see if you can keep them where they are, if that's possible in your body. Just moving in and out a few times. So not only working to open up the backs of the legs here, but also finding some mobility through our hips, right? All right, now since we're on the left side, you're not gonna get a butt shot. That's always the struggle of Zoom. I'm like, oh, here it is. All right, we're gonna take, actually, no, first we're gonna stay in pyramid pose. So We're gonna shorten our stance. Hop your back foot in until your foot is grounded. And just double check and look at your feet and imagine that they're on railroad tracks rather than a tightrope. Your right toes are facing the upper right corner of your yoga mat. And then I'm pulling back through my left hip and forward through my right hip so my hips can square off. You can kind of see me twisting, my hips are open, now they're square. You can stay here with a flat back if that's what feels right, or you can fold forward a little. Again, don't let the folding forward sacrifice the lengthening of your legs. If folding forward means you have to bend your knees, then just back out of the fold a little bit. Keep breathing here. And now we're gonna walk our hands over to the right. You might take your blocks with you if you're using blocks. Turn your left toes in, turn your right toes out. So we're in that wide angle forward fold. You can even widen your stance a little bit if it was narrow. And we'll hang out here for a minute. If you don't have blocks or books and your hands aren't touching the ground, then I would say bend your knees until you can get your hands on the ground, so that we have something to help ground us as we rock the weight back and forward and back and forward. And this time I would invite you to even come into what almost is like a downward dog. So you're gonna rock your weight forward and then crawl your hands forward. And then really push into your hands and push into your heels and pull your hips back. So we're really lengthening our spine. It's not quite as long of a stance as downward dog, maybe about half as long, but a nice little stretch for your spine here. And just kind of notice if you're swaying in your lower back and arching it. If you are, then hug your abdominals in, and even think about hugging your rib cage into your back body. So it's like I took my tail, like if my tailbone was facing the ceiling, I'm kind of now turning my tailbone to face the wall behind me. So the pelvis is more neutral rather than tilted. Okay, walk your hands back in so they're under your shoulders, and then push into your feet a lot and take your hands to your hips. Use your abdominals to help keep your torso lifted for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Come all the way up, turn the left toes out. Let's take a warrior 2. Front heel aligns to the arch of the back foot. And then we're just deeply bending into that left knee, or just bending into the left knee as much as you can. Firming up the right leg. 5 breaths here, we'll stay. If stillness is challenging for you, let your mind focus on your breathing. Now I'm breathing in. Now I'm breathing out. Now I'm breathing in. Now I'm breathing out. 2 more breaths here. And cartwheel your hands down to your mat. Spin your right heel up. Step your left foot back to downward dog. Inhale, come forward to plank pose. Exhale, knees soften down. Sit back to a child's pose. Take a full breath in and a full breath out. Come back up to your hands and knees when you're ready. And we're gonna, before we head into our restorative section, I wanna just guide us through a few rounds of chaturanga push-ups. So for me, I do this with my knees down. Some of you might be able to lift your knees. Shift your weight forward so the shoulders are over the wrists. Bend the elbows back. I actually need to move my knees back. Bend the elbows back, lower down halfway. Hug the elbows in. And then push back up. 2 more times. Shift the weight forward. Really wrap the abdominal wall in. Lower down halfway, elbows hug in and they bend back. And then press back up. And last time, shift the weight forward. Lower down halfway. And back up. All right, tuck the toes under, come back to downward dog. Inhale, come forward to plank. Exhale, soften the knees down. This time, lower all the way down to your belly. All right, so as we come onto the belly, you can let your forehead or your cheek rest on your mat for a moment and take your arms along your sides. And we'll prepare for 3 rounds of back bending. The first round will just come into Sphinx pose. So come up onto your elbows and your forearms and let your hands come to cup your elbows. This is a great measuring tool, so we know that our elbows are no wider than our shoulders. And then you can take your forearms and palms back down to the ground. And the tendency in this pose is to kind of like dump into our shoulders. So push into your elbows and your forearms and pull up and out of your shoulders. And then as you push into elbows and pull up and out of your shoulders, think about taking your rib cage and drawing it forward. Breathe. Press into your elbows and forearms a little bit more. See if you can draw your shoulders down even more. And then lower all the way down. Rest for a moment. Now we're going to zip our legs together. Press into the tops of your feet so your kneecaps lift off of your mat. And then think about pressing your pubic bone into your mat. So it's like your tailbone actually curls towards your heels a little. Take your arms along your side with the palms down, and then lift your head, neck, and shoulders off your mat, Shalabhasana. So I'm keeping my hands and feet on the mat. The gaze is down at the ground so that we're not overextending our neck. Press into your hands and feet and see if you can lift a little higher. Breathe here. And lower down. Take a moment to rest. Now we're going to do Shalabhasana again, and this time I'll give you the option to see what it feels like to do this pose with your hands and feet lifted off of your mat. So the legs still stay as close together as they physically can. When you're ready, you can lift the feet, lift the hands, and come on up. And it might be helpful for you to turn your palms up towards the ceiling this time. Think about growing longer through your body rather than lifting higher. And the abdominal muscles are connected to the back muscles, so pull your abdominals in as a way to protect your back. Breathe. And lower down. All right, we're done back bending. You can wiggle the hips out. I haven't taught back bending in a while because I haven't been able to do it. My back has finally come back to a place where I can back bend. So that's exciting. You can bend your knees and windshield wiper your feet side to side if that feels good. Okay, and now we're just gonna push ourselves back up. You can move through bent knees, and you can even sit back to a child's pose for a second if you'd like to just round your back and counteract the back bending for a moment. Okay, and now we'll get into the restorative section of our practice. So each of these poses are going to be held for anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes. In a traditional restorative class, poses are held even longer, like 5 to 10 minutes. But for the sake of time, And for the sake of time of day it is, that for you all, we'll hold a little bit shorter. So the first pose that we're going to do is a restorative forward fold. You can go ahead and extend your legs out in front of you. Now, I know we're all working with different props at home, so I'll try to give you a few options. If you have blocks or even a water bottle available, you can set your blocks up in between your legs. Okay, I'm stacking one in between my legs and then one on top of that block. And then I'm going to fold forward and let my forehead rest on these blocks. Okay, so this is one option. If you don't have blocks, but you have pillows, you could, I'm going to use my blanket. I don't have pillows, but you could put your pillows up on top of your body and stack them up until you can fold forward and rest your head on your pillows. So the idea is that we're bringing the ground closer to us. We're not forcing ourselves to land on our pillows. If it doesn't happen, then add in more props. And since we're holding these shapes for an extended amount of time, you might find that even after a minute that you're able to remove a pillow or a block. So go ahead and make your way there, however it makes sense for you. And I'll keep track of the time. And as you come into this restorative shape, I would invite you to notice if there's anywhere where you're clenching or tightening. And can you send your breath to those parts of the body where you're clenching or tightening? And let your breath allow your body to start to soften in those areas. Give yourself about 10 to 15 breaths to start to release. Letting the breath be slow and steady. And if your mind gets distracted, if it wanders off, know that that's completely normal. See if you can guide your focus back to your breathing. And give your mind something to do by letting it focus on your breath. Wherever you are in this fold, bring your palms onto your legs and slowly start to walk your hands up your legs, providing some support as you roll up through your spine. Bringing your head up last. Feel free to roll the shoulders up and back a couple times. Okay. The next pose that we'll come into is legs up the wall. If you don't have a wall nearby, you can drape your legs over a couch, a chair, your bed. So hopefully, I think this camera angle actually does still allow for you to see me. I like to put a little blanket underneath my hips for this. So feel free to set that up first, setting it up flush with the wall. And then you're gonna turn so that your side body and your hip are facing the wall. You're gonna roll onto your side, and as you roll onto your side, wiggle your butt back so your butt touches the wall. And then roll onto your back and let your legs rest on the wall. So you're really close to the wall. If you're not using a wall, you'll get into this the same way. You're just gonna bend your knees and let them drape over your chair, your couch, or maybe your bed. It might also feel nice to put a pillow or some kind of support under your head here. And if you'd like a little more elevation of the hips, you can stack up another pillow or blanket and put it underneath your hips or your pelvis. And we'll be here for just a couple of minutes. Let your breath be present. Slowly breathing in. Slowly breathing out. Remembering to bring yourself back into this moment when you find your mind wandering off. And it's okay for the mind to wander. We just don't want to get stuck in that wandering place. Stillness and meditation requires a little bit of focus. So again, if it's helpful, you might recite in your mind, now I'm breathing in. Now I'm breathing out. And if legs up the wall is really doing it for you today and you want to stay here for the next 4 minutes, then do that. If you'd like to spend the next 4 minutes in Shavasana, lying down on your back, or even lying on your side, feel free to make your way there now. And we'll come into the final few moments of our practice. And as we settle into these last few moments, I would invite you to take full advantage of this time to let go of any extra tension that you might still be holding on to, which I know can be easier said than done. So perhaps locating that part of the body that's feeling a little tense and sending it some kindness, sending it some oxygen, sending it some breath. And even if it's helpful, you can place a hand on the heart or a hand on the belly if this helps ground you, if it helps you to feel a sense of calm. We'll only be here for a few more minutes. Start to invite a little movement back into your body. You can wiggle toes and fingers. Maybe nod the head side to side. If your legs are on the wall, then start to bend your knees in towards your chest. And if you're lying down on your back, you can also bend your knees in towards your chest. And let's all roll over to our side, coming into a fetal position. Just kind of curling up here for a second. And then come all the way up, press into your hands and bring yourself up to sit. Okay. And as we bring our practice to a close, I will invite you to chant Om with me. Chanting Om unites our energies, our voices, even though they're apart. And it helps us acknowledge that while we might be very different, we are all. So guiding your palms together, and you can join me or you can listen. Let's first take a big breath in and let it out. And breathing in Om. Om.